welcome back to episode 3 of the Back to Formula podcast, where two longtime friends discuss films and just shoot the shit in general, all with the goal of not only entertaining ourselves, but hopefully anyone else listening as well. My name is Christian, and I'm here with my co-host,
Jordan. Hello. It's been a while since we've actually done some shit. And you're actually wrong on that episode count, dude. It was actually 4.
Yeah, I realized that. I realized that when I was saying it, but I'm just going to leave that shit in. Whatever.
Some ass clown activity.
Yeah, it's actually 4, which you guys will see in the title, so who really cares? And today, we're back with a few topics that we were wanting to touch upon here. Topics are getting pretty scarce now due to all this pandemonium going on, by the way, which is kind of scary. But anyways, I think it's a safe bet to call us both Star Wars fans. And I personally think it's kind of hard not to be one. Lots of different people have so many different takes on all the movies. Today, we're going to be touching on the most recent entry, which happens to be Jordan's favorite of the bunch, The Rise of Skywalker.
So before I verbally destroy this movie, I just want to give some background. I loved Star Wars growing up. I was heavily into it. And actually, you got me back into it because I just fell off the wagon of Star Wars like years ago. And I don't know, I didn't really have any kind of interest or agenda to get back into it. And then I think you and me, it was Disney Plus, that's right. Disney Plus came out a few months ago. And I restarted watching like all the prequels again. I haven't watched the sequels yet, or not the sequels, the originals, but it just kind of got me back into the groove of watching Star Wars again. And I still like it to this day. I mean, the prequels have their flaws. I mean, that'll be a topic for another time. But yeah, the most recent entry is Episode 9. And I mean, to be honest, it was just a fucking giant letdown, you know?
And that's definitely something that we're going to get into. And I do remember specifically a long time ago, you and me would be all over, looking over the different lightsaber fights in the originals and the prequels. I think even before the sequels came out from Disney, and you were pretty much into it, just like I was as well. And then, time passes on, you get into other shit, you lose interest, right? And
exactly.
So that happens. And before we get into Rise of Skywalker specifically, we do plan on covering each of the different trilogies that they have and kind of going over those. But Rise of Skywalker was supposed to be, bottom line, the cap off to this entire saga that we had from the originals, prequels, and ending it with this being the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, for the story. And it's interesting because I remember coming out of this theater, I think you and I had higher, a little bit more optimistic opinions about it. And would you say that's due to the silver screen effect?
I think the reason I had as much high expectation, I mean, I don't think I really had high expectations just because I'm not the biggest fan of the sequels anyway. Like, I really liked The Force Awakens, and after seeing Episode 9, I now like The Last Jedi. But these movies have not really been the strongest, in my opinion, like, at all. Like, I think The Force Awakens plays on that nostalgia factor, like, really good. And I think it has, like, a perfect balance of a good new story and that nostalgia factor. But, like, it was just such a super letdown. Like, when I went into the theater, I was just like, okay, well, this is the last movie. I'm hoping that it's good. And that was really all the expectations that I had. And then I walked out of it and I was just like, that was just super, like, underwhelming. Like, that's really the best word that I can use to describe the experience was just underwhelming. Like,
I also remember you hearing someone else's take on the whole movie itself when it comes to as a Star Wars movie and finishing the story. And they actually described it as overwhelming. And I remember you were saying that you pretty much completely disagree with that and you weren't getting what you were looking for. I think it's kind of hard to expect all of that from one film, but it's not even the fact that I didn't get enough. It's the fact that the choices that I got didn't really feel like they went all the way, and they were kind of half-assed. And that's what's kind of disappointing to me the most. I think just a few tweaks, or maybe just a longer time to really flesh some shit out, and it could have been so much better, but I left it. I remember thinking, I knew it was the worst out of the 3 right after the theater. I left and I'm like, I know it's not better than Force Awakens. I know I like Last Jedi a lot more. And it's disappointing because I really did enjoy The Force Awakens a lot. And I know it's JJ again, not the same writer, but it's hard to describe because The Force Awakens has a lot of the nostalgia factor. And I did think it pretty much did retread a lot of the same ground from A New Hope. But Disney was wanting to introduce the old feel of Star Wars again since, in their perspective and pretty much the internet's perspective at that time, the prequels were disliked. And they were pretty much shunned. Again, don't agree with that all the way, being a prequel sympathizer, but more to the point, The Last Jedi came out, and that one, Disney heard all the complaints. It's the same thing. It's the same thing. We want something different. We want something different. So what does Rian Johnson do? He's like, I'm not going to do the same thing. I'm actually going to turn Star Wars on its head and make a whole different story. Is all of it great? No. I think it's a mixed bag, but overall, I would say I'm happy that there was at least something different in there. And Rise of
Yeah, that
Skywalker,
even that lovely casino part, right? One of
yeah,
the
that's
worst fucking parts of the movie.
probably the worst fucking parts in like almost all of the whole trilogy there. But
So stupid. Like, it just didn't even like go anywhere. And you know, my thing is like with this movie, man, like each trilogy is about a different generation of Skywalker. Prequels are about Anakin, the originals are about Luke, but we didn't really get a trilogy about Kylo. Like, this dude is the main lineage. He's the current lineage in the Skywalker gene pool, and they made it
yeah,
all about fucking Rey. Like, Kylo Ren was the best thing to come out of this new trilogy, and we just got snuffed with him. Like, it didn't
yeah.
even go anywhere.
The thing about it too is, like you said, not only is each trilogy a focus, this one they did it on. It was supposed to be more about Rey, and then Kylo was a big part of it too, right? And I don't have a problem with that on paper. The problem that I have with it is Rey doesn't really have much of a change. Her story doesn't really go anywhere. It kind of feels just thrown together. And who's really interesting in this whole series is Kylo. And every time you see him, I think he's great always. Even if the movie around him is not great, he's great. But he's not the focus of it. And then when
Yeah.
he's in when his whole life is gone, pretty much, you're just kind of like, well, you wasted him, you know? Like that was a lot of potential for something really cool you could have gotten into there.
This dude based his entire ideology behind his grandfather. And we didn't even get to see that at all. Like, the dude didn't even talk to his grandfather. It was fucking Rey who talked to all the Jedi. Even though the Skywalkers are supposed to be the most force-sensitive beings in this whole universe, it was fucking Rey who was lazily written to be Palpatine's granddaughter to talk to all the Jedi.
Very last
Like,
minute, by the way, you can tell.
What fucking like what fucking sense does that make? Like I don't know, man. It's just like it's shit like that that just like pisses me off about this movie. Like, this is very lazy writing, big cop outs. It just sucks, man. Like,
Well, and
I
you
know
know,
I know I sound super biased, but I just don't really appreciate lazy writing.
you can only call it the way that you see it. And if you go back to Force Awakens, speaking about talking to grandfathers and shit, just like you said, Kylo was very obsessed with his grandfather's how do you say, like, his reputation, his legacy at that time, just kind of
Yeah,
like what
legacy.
he's for. And he was talking to his mask and everything. That kind of leads you to feel like there's some kind of
Yeah,
connection
didn't
there.
go anywhere.
But then now that you see Rise of Skywalker, it almost seems like, no, he was just talking to himself the whole time. He pretty much wasn't doing shit. And we can get into, I have a few things I was going to bring up later with twists that apparently were going to happen in there. Apparently there was going to be a scene where Anakin, coming back as Hayden Christensen as a ghost, does come back and talk to Kylo Ren, which I would have thought would have been not only cool, but powerful. That shit doesn't happen. So that's cool.
Yeah, because at the end, right before he dies, he becomes Anakin again. So he redeems himself. It's not he's not Vader anymore. He becomes Anakin again right before he dies.
Yeah, exactly. And there was going to be some connection there. A few things that didn't pan out that way, which blows. And going back to Rey really quick before I forget, with Rey, I don't have a problem with her being the main focus of this trilogy. If there was an arc, I feel like she starts off the movie, we don't know that much about her, but she always has this very plain, good, almost like a Girl Scout type of mentality. We get into Last Jedi, it brings up interesting themes of, is she maybe going to start accessing all these powers that she has that actually leads her into the darker side of the Force because she's being pulled by that? And it teases you a little bit with it, right? But then, no, it doesn't really happen. She just kind of just like, no, I'm good. And then the third one, no change at all, really, either. She just gets a lot of help from the Jedi Order and defeats them. That's it. Like, there was no change with Rey, no real big conflict that she had. And then when you were waiting to see what her lineage was, and it was Palpatine. Like, that was very underwhelming, and it didn't seem like it was meant to be that.
Not only that, but like even when Ben Solo redeems his character, like all he did was just that he had a conversation with his pops. Then he throws away his lightsaber, decides that he's Ben Solo again, and then he gets his ass kicked by the Knights of Ren. And then he's not even the one to fucking defeat Palpatine. He gets his ass kicked by him too, gets thrown into the ditch, and fucking Rey's the one to defeat him. But his redemption is that he gives his life for her. Like,
I mean, can we talk about that as well? Just really quick. That's the climax, man. Holding two lightsabers together to make an X-Men symbol, and you walk towards them. That's it. That's the best you could come up with.
They did that. I fucking forgot that they did that shit, dude.
That's what she does, man.
I have not seen that movie since it's come out.
she grabs the two blades and crosses them to make an X, right? And he's doing his force lightning, and she walks close to him, and he
Oh yeah,
blows
then he
his
poofs. Yeah.
yeah, he poofs away. And
Yeah, I mean, it was basically an Iron. It was basically an Iron Man 2 that she pulled with War Machine and Iron Man, where they would kill Whiplash. Basically, like pretty lazy writing. Again, lazy writing, man. Like
I was gonna say for a second, I thought you were gonna bring up Jeff Bridges, and she was gonna be like, "My powers are better than yours, Palpy."
fucking Jeff Bridges.
And
Tony Stark, you build this in a cave.
Now
that scene's will always be hilarious. But anyway,
well, I'm not Tony Stark.
I'm not Tony Stark. Okay, poor guy. He probably went home and killed himself. Anyway,
you and I have been touching on kind of the big points here for this movie, and we are going to wrap this up soon. But I was wondering, we didn't really get a chance to talk about the smaller aspects of Rise of Skywalker. Now, what do you think about, for example, Poe in that movie, Finn, the other characters? Did they matter to you at all?
Nah, not really. I didn't really give a shit about him. Like, I mean, Finn had they made him seem like really important and really cool in The Force Awakens, but again, like, he had such a shitty arc in The Last Jedi. And I didn't really give a shit about him at that point. And I mean, I love Oscar Isaac. Like, I think he's a great actor, but I couldn't care less. I couldn't care less for him as Poe. Like, I don't give a shit. The only thing I cared about was Kylo Ren, and that was literally it. Like, I don't really care about the rest of these characters at all.
Man, I feel like they did John Boyega and Oscar Isaac so dirty.
They really did. They could have. They totally could have had a way better character or story arc, but it just didn't happen.
And it's a shame because I feel like their intros for both of them were pretty great. And Poe doesn't get it as bad, in my opinion, but man, poor Finn. I thought he was one of the cooler aspects. A stormtrooper going rogue, deciding he doesn't want to follow orders. Where does that go? I mean, not nowhere really. Everybody was talking about how cool it would have been if he finds a way to make it so other soldiers or stormtroopers can break through from it, or he can kind of do it on a mass scale, which I thought would have been cool. But no, it doesn't really happen. It's just that he just happened to be a stormtrooper. But other than that, he wouldn't be.
I would have been way more accepted, or way more. I don't know the word I'm looking for, but I would have enjoyed the fact that he was this. I don't know, maybe like this descendant of Mace Windu. Maybe he was related to him. And I know that sounds like a really bad NyQuil cough syrup kind of theory, but it would have been a really cool thing to maybe see him be related to Mace Windu, and maybe that's why he was force sensitive. But
probably.
Again, and nothing cool like that ever happened. But then again, Mace Windu was a hardcore Jedi, so he wouldn't have been in no cheeks anyway. Like, it wouldn't make sense.
Probably. And people have been throwing this one around since The Force Awakens. And yeah, maybe it's something that's too obvious or on the nose, but I would have been perfectly fine if Rey turned out to be a descendant of the Kenobi family somehow. I think it would have made sense because she has that accent. I think that she talks to him in the Force vision. You can hear Ewan McGregor's voice in The Force Awakens. I think that would have been cooler than the whole Palpatine thing.
That would have been way more acceptable.
It just doesn't make sense. Why Palpatine? When did he have kids? When was he blowing loads on all these bitches, apparently? I don't get that.
Fucking Sheev over here blowing loads and random women. Like, it just makes
his
no sense.
Face, with his weird face.
But the thing is, I like that idea about Obi-Wan, but I remember, I haven't watched the Clone Wars, but I remember there being an episode where he had a girlfriend or something like that.
Yeah, he does.
It would have been cool if he had they had played it off of that, and that could have been his granddaughter. Maybe he had a kid with that chick, and it was just never talked about or never heard. And then I don't know.
Well, that
would have been way more acceptable.
Yeah, even in that episode, they do mention that he kind of had to keep all that under the table because obviously you're not supposed to love or have sex when you're a Jedi. So that was just more something he kind of did on the side. So that would make sense if she was kind of born like that. But man, there's so much to talk about this movie. But I think the way that we both feel about it, probably you to a worse extent. I am disappointed by it, and it's kind of sad because I feel like I would have been okay with maybe just those first two and a better version of this. This third one just kind of renders this whole trilogy almost useless, and it sucks because I really did like the first two. So
I don't even consider these movies to be canon at this point. If it was good, I would consider it, but I don't count it. I consider this to be fan fiction.
I had a coworker who was telling me, he's like, for me, they stop at the end of the originals, and these movies, they're just like a side story if you feel like you want to dig deeper, but they're not really like part of the story.
Yeah, it's fan
So,
fiction for me. It's like a what if for me. Not only that, and I know we're gonna move on, but not only does the writing suck in this movie, the fucking story progression was garbage. Like, remember
it's
at the
choppy,
beginning?
man.
It's so choppy. Like, this Kylo Ren's in a starfighter. He goes to Exegol. He fucks niggas up on this planet. He's talking to Palpatine. We move over to the Millennium Falcon. They're shooting up niggas. They go to the planet with Leia. They got to go to the desert planet to do different shit. Like, it's just so much
Dude, yes, the
information
movie
being
is like
thrown at
boom,
me.
boom, 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 boom. It's like, come on, can we just like chill for a bit, man?
For real. Like, it was just so much just being tossed at me at once, and I'm just like, "Will you please take a fucking second to just absorb the goddamn story." Couldn't even do that.
Oh man. Well, yeah. I guess we agree. Story disappointing. Pacing in the editing has some problems. How about the visual effects? Did you at least think the CG visual stuff was good?
I mean, that, to me, the CGI, that's the bare minimum of a Star Wars movie, in my opinion. Like, they should be able to deliver decent visuals. Like, I mean, the only positives I have about this movie is the one lightsaber fight on the original or on the second Death Star. Like, that's it. Like, I don't really have any other like cool things that I liked about this movie. I mean, I think it was cool that she had a yellow saber, because yellow is one of my favorite colors. And what was it? I think she was trying to mend the colors of blue and green. So Luke's saber and Leia's saber to make yellow.
Yeah, that's
so
what
I think that was like, that's what she was trying to do. But you can't call this movie The Rise of Skywalker. And the fact that she ended the movie saying, "Oh, I'm Rey Skywalker," is just dumb to me. Like, you're not a Skywalker. I get the message that they were trying to convey, but it was lazy and it was stupid, in my opinion. I think it was extremely lazy.
It's not. Yeah, it's not that it doesn't make sense, because if I put my thinking brain on and I'm like, they're trying to say that she doesn't have to be a Palpatine, she can be whoever she wants to be. I get that, but when you see it, it doesn't work. It just doesn't really work, you know?
No, it doesn't. It doesn't work at all. It doesn't. Like, I'm still here, obviously. Just I was on mute, but yeah, it doesn't work. Like, it's just it's a cop out. Like you and I both said, it's a cop out. Just like Palpatine, it's a cop out. Just like him getting his ass beat by the Knights of Ren, it's a cop out. Just like him sacrificing himself, everything's a cop out in this movie.
This movie's just worse than the actual cop out movie with Bruce Willis.
I don't even remember that fucking movie. The movie's so old. Episode 9, more like The Rise of Cop Outs.
Rise of Cop Outs. Well, are you having any hope for this new trilogy that they've been teasing ad nauseum?
If they're talking about Knights of the Old Republic, I know that you're a lore guy, but the more lore that I've done research into was Darth Vader, because that nigga's hard as fuck, and I love Vader. But I think it would be cool to see like the Knights of the Old Republic, and maybe talk about how the Sith were in rule, and then talk about how the Jedi pretty much got rid of the Sith, and maybe they could talk about not Plagueis, but Nihilus is what I meant. You could talk about Nihilus and stuff like that. I think that'd be really cool to see. But again, it had to be executed correctly, and they'd have to make, they have to make us want to know more and care about these characters. Like, I think it'll be really hard for them to try and do something that's not related to Skywalker, because that's such a driving force behind all these movies.
And how about this? Have a plan before you start these trilogies. Know what you're going to start with and where you want them to end. Instead of, hey,
exactly.
You do this. Oh, you want to make a movie? All right, do whatever the fuck you want. Oh, that doesn't make sense to this? Well, just do whatever you want. Like, how does that make sense from a business perspective?
The funny thing is that I didn't know that that's how the original movies were made, but for some reason it fucking worked.
It did.
For some reason it worked. Now, obviously, the prequels are going to have its own story, because, they have a story that they have to get to, so that's understandable. The funny thing is that they did this for all the Alien movies too. I mean, we're going to talk about Alien later, but it's all different. It's all different directors, but like, they don't make you feel like the main character was ever shit on or disrespected, or that the movie was ever, a cop out of lazy writing. Like, each director in Alien not in all the Aliens, at least made all the Alien movies their own movies, and that's what Star Wars should have been. At least this new trilogy, that is.
Right. I'm not saying take away a director's voice or their style. Absolutely, let them do what they do, but have some kind of plan. This whole just do whatever you want, and then at the end it's just a mishmash. It's not going to work for something like this. And to pretty much top this off, my final statement on this Star Wars for now, because we're going to come back on this, but right now, yes, the prequels have lots of flaws and lots of issues. And anyone who still hates the prequels with a passion, all I got to say is, at the end of the day, at least George Lucas had a plan. He started with Phantom Menace and Revenge of the Sith, and they started somewhere, and they grew, and they went somewhere. I can't say the same for the characters in the sequel trilogy, which is pretty sad.
Yeah, you took the words right out of my mouth. So I think that's it for our Star Wars discussion. And I know that we wanted to move forward with some movies that we've seen recently as of this year, but there's not a whole lot to talk about. And I don't want to spend time drawing on this either because I'm annoyed thinking about it, but due to this pandemic that we have going on.
Yeah.
But we'll go ahead and start with I want to do Birds of Prey first because we'll talk about Invisible Man after. But
just touch on it really quick. Not much to talk about, really, right?
Yeah, we could touch base on it, but I know you and I both have very similar views on Birds of Prey.
Yeah.
To me, the best thing about this movie was Ewan McGregor. I think he was like the best part of the fucking movie next to Margot Robbie. I do think that she encompasses and captures Harley Quinn to a T, in my opinion. Mm-hmm. I just think that the way that they dress her is a little stupid, but I do think she captures the spirit of Harley Quinn appropriately, in my opinion. To me, I mean, you already know my complaints about it, but like I said, I know we wanted to just touch base on it briefly, but I feel like it was a fucking hour and 50-minute music video.
Yeah, for sure. And they kind of adapted that style from Suicide Squad. It seems like it carried over, didn't it?
Yeah, but the thing with Suicide Squad is that I don't remember them having as much music as they did in that movie. Like, it was there, but it wasn't as prevalent as it was in this movie.
Oh man, I feel like it's been too long since you've seen it. You definitely need to watch that again. Yeah, I'm telling you, same exact thing. But until you see it again, we can touch on that again. But besides that, if we take away Suicide Squad, I felt the same way because whenever you go from scene to scene, there's almost no. I'm not gonna say no, but there's very rarely a scene where there's not like blasting music and it's like a soundtrack, and you're just being bombarded with pop music, you know. And it's more just like, can I like sit here and actually absorb a story, kind of like what we were talking about before, just in a different way now with music.
Yeah, it felt like I was just watching an extended music video of like, what's the word? Like where they have like those different mixes on different like channels where you listen to different music. That's what it felt like I was watching. Yeah, definitely. And I mean, I don't mean to sound sexist, but I really do feel like that there was like a feminism agenda in this movie, and I'm okay for women's rights. Like, you know, I encourage it. But I just do feel like sometimes like certain directors and certain writers, when they get behind the screen, I feel like that they have their own personal vendettas leak out into their movies just a little bit too much.
I think it just like stays on there and you can see it.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned it in Captain Marvel, like how it's just so prevalent in that movie, and I haven't seen Captain Marvel in a very long time. And I'm game for female heroes and female characters. Like I love Alien. You know, Sigourney Weaver knocked that out of the park. I love Annihilation. That's based around a female character. I'm trying to think of. I think Wonder Woman is decent. Like, I mean, I don't think it's not my favorite DC film, but I definitely did not feel a feminist agenda. I feel like I was watching a Wonder Woman movie. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, I hear you. And I think that's kind of the only part where we disagree, because I also have to say that Ewan is my favorite part of the movie. He's pretty much great in everything. Even if he's in a bad movie, it's hard to not enjoy him. And Margot Robbie, I feel like she does capture Harley Quinn as best as we can get currently with a live-action movie. I've heard a lot of people say that, and I'm not just kind of saying that as like a parrot move, but she really does feel like Harley Quinn to me in live action, even in movies that I don't think are good. She isn't.
I agree. I just don't agree with the way that they gotta sexualize her. Like, why?
You don't like how they sexualize her, even though they do that in other media, like for example the Arkham games. Did that bother you?
The Arkham games didn't really bother me because it's just a fucking game.
Well, I mean,
you don't really.
They're still stories.
I know that sounds extremely hypocritical, but to me, like it's different when it's portrayed in certain media. Like if we're watching a movie versus we're actually playing a game. Mm-hmm. Because, and I do see what you mean about them sexualizing her in the games. I just got done playing Arkham Knight recently, and I remember they got her tits hanging out, and she's got tight ass leggings on with a skirt. So,
I mean, now that you mentioned it, almost off of that one a little bit. I feel like they did, and maybe some comics.
Yeah, I can see that. But I mean, as far as like characteristics go and how she acts, I agree. She does capture Harley Quinn, and I enjoy that. I just wish that they didn't really like make her dress all like, you know, campy and skitsy and whatnot. I don't really know like the words I'm looking for, but you get what I'm trying to say.
Would you have preferred something like the actual Harley Quinn outfit that they do in the animated series, or something more like Suicide Squad?
I think her attire in Suicide. Well, again, I need to revisit that movie because I can't really speak to it that accurately. I do hear that she was like dressing pretty. What's the word I'm looking for? Help me out here.
Well, I mean,
Pretty.
if I can help you out, she was wearing like booty shorts, and she had like fishnets on,
Yeah, fishnets, right?
and she had a t-shirt.
So,
Yeah,
but I think in Birds of Prey, I think she was a little bit more clothed up, wasn't she?
yeah. I was about to say, I actually feel like she did not wear as much revealing clothes as she did before.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, okay. So it's not just me then. Okay. So yeah, I'll take that. And like you just said, if she had a similar but a modern outfit that worked as her original Harley Quinn outfit, I think that would be cool. Like maybe she wore a lot of red and black. Like maybe she wore like some, I don't know, red and black leggings and maybe some like, I mean, I'm not a fucking stylist, but anything that would resemble that outfit, I think it would translate perfectly.
Yeah, I see that. And my other point that I had here I wanted to touch up on was the action, because I told you this a little bit earlier. The guys who actually did the choreography and the stunt work for the John Wick series, they were hired on to do the action for the Birds of Prey movie. And even for parts that I don't like the movie, when it comes to the action parts, I'm just a sucker for well done action. You already know this. I know you are too. And I just feel like a lot of that was really done. Not every scene was spectacular, but for example, like the scene where she's fucking people up with a baseball bat. There's this part where she's messing people up in a car. I thought was pretty cool. And then Huntress, she's like shooting people out in a bar. It's like a bar, like a restaurant or something. She's like shooting dudes out and she's like dodging bullets and stuff. I thought that was
Yeah,
cool.
I remember that.
What do you think?
Those parts are pretty good. I just didn't really like the slow mo every like 5 minutes, and I thought that the carnival fight at the very end was very messy.
Yes.
I wasn't a fan of it.
That's what I was going to say. Not all of it. I cannot say every action scene, because that carnival fight at the end, they kind of made it seem like more grand than it really was. You know what I mean? Like they were just sliding everywhere, bumping into dudes, but they just made it seem like it was so cool. And I was like, "You're nothing really crazy is going on. You're just bumping into people." But something that I don't find the same as you is the feminism. And I know we talked about this before, but I personally feel in a lot of other movies, especially superhero movies like Captain Marvel, the feminism is so much more in your face and not subtle in the least bit that didn't really bother me in this movie. Not that it's not there, but when I was watching it, I didn't come away being like, that was feminist. Because I'm like, if I have to say which one is feminist more, Captain Marvel by a long shot. Like, that was kind of insulting. And feminism by itself, again, I'm not sexist. It's not something that turns me off to a movie, but it wasn't something that bothered me in here like it did you.
I get you. Yeah, I mean, it's been a minute since I've revisited Captain Marvel, so maybe I'll see what you're talking about if I rewatch it. But yeah, I think that wraps up our Birds of Prey discussion. I mean, like I said, Ewan McGregor's the best part. Ew. I love it. all that shit that he does. And to me, like, I know Black Mask isn't gay in any of the comics, not that I know of, but to me, it kind of worked in this movie because I've always known that Black Mask has always been kind of a psycho. I mean, at least in some of the media that I've read and heard about. And I think him being gay has made him really like overly emotional in a lot of aspects, and I think it just added to his crazy factor.
I agree.
Think it kind of worked.
Same thing, man, because every single time that I've seen Black Mask in any other kind of version, he's never been in the slightest, at least to me, he didn't come off as gay. So I was kind of worried about hearing that when I came in, but after I was done, I thought the same thing. It actually worked with everything going on. It just seemed like that just kind of added to his more sporadic, like emotional outbursts and like shit that he did within the movie. And it's also like heavily implied that him and Zaz have something going on, which was kind of
I'm not really into all that. And the reason why I'm not into all that is because you look at Zaz in the comics, and the dude is like, he's psycho. Like I like the fact that he was telling Cassandra Cain, "Oh, I got a cut right here for you," because he does that in the comics. He's got a knife cut on all parts of his body, so everybody.
Oh, he does? I didn't know
cool. That. Yeah, that is he runs around basically like in some fucking chonies all the time, and he has like cuts all over his legs, his torso, his arms, his chest, and that's apparently to represent everybody that he's ever murdered. So that's the only thing about Zaz that I liked in that movie. I just didn't really enjoy the sexual tension that they had between each other. Again, that's just my opinion. But I like the fact that Black Mass was gay. I just don't really like the fact that they kind of had that weird sexual vibe with each other.
Oh, that's fair. How about Zaz, like the actor by himself, when it wasn't about that and he was just being creepy? Did you like him?
Yeah, I'm
Eh,
indifferent on Zaz. I didn't really like the fact that his hair was fucking bleached. That bothered the fuck out of me.
that just gave me a fucking Suicide Squad vibe about like Joker being all
Exactly.
edgy and stuff. I hear you. Well,
Yeah, it's not really my favorite.
if unless you have anything else to add on to this, we can talk about a much better movie in all aspects.
My guy Lee Wanell.
My guy Lee Wanell. I've been rooting for him since. Well, I wouldn't say since Saw, because Saw's always been okay for me, but ever since Upgrade, been spreading that good word, and we're going to talk about the hung Invisible Man.
This dude just like creeping on you, and he's just like swinging past his knees, and he's just invisible, and you just can't see it. That's the real horror.
Imagine he's like just walking over a coffee table, and you just see like stuff in the middle get knocked over. It's funny.
Oh man. Fucking so yeah, Invisible Man. I've always been hyped to see this movie. I think you and me have been extremely like excited for this movie, even from the previews. Like me and you were like, oh man,
we knew it, and we saw the trailer. You and I were like on the same boat.
yeah, exactly. And it's not this movie. Spoiler warning, by the way. This movie is not like your traditional kind of Invisible Man where a guy experiments with himself and he makes himself invisible. It does a very good job of capturing domestic violence. Not only that, but also what's the word I'm looking for? Mental abuse.
Yeah.
And
he focuses on mental abuse when it comes to the way he feels like he needs to control people.
yeah, he's a narcissist and a what's the word? A manipulator. Yeah, because he's always trying to work his way around into making people do or bind to his will.
And it's something that makes you feel like you're able to connect with, even if you have never been in this situation, obviously. I'm pretty sure everyone has had that one point in time where you feel like you've been gaslighted to make people feel like you're doing something, or someone has been trying to stir things around to make your intentions seem more sinister than they actually are. And that's where everything comes into play, because you look back at the original, The Invisible Man, the one made in the 30s, you know, it's a very different kind of movie. And what this one tries to do is it tries to take that concept and bring it into the modern world, where it's not so much about how creepy is it that there's this guy who's wearing a suit that you can't see his head. It's more about what would a controlling, manipulative person do with the power of not being seen and being able to shape the way that not only this person that he's antagonizing feels themselves, how other people see them as well. And that kind of just I want to talk about the background of this movie really quick, because I think it's really interesting. It actually has a lot to do with Universal. As you know, Universal is the studio that was there from the very beginning making all these movies. They did that Frankenstein, the original movie, Dracula, The Mummy,
yeah.
you know, The Wolfman, all that stuff. So that stuff has always been classics. People always regard those as great cinema back in the day. They always have been trying to bring that back. They wanted to make a dark universe, current cinematic movie world where these monsters are the focus to drive stories. And they've been doing this even before that remake with The Mummy. They did, I think it was 2008 or 2009. They did The Wolfman with Benicio del Toro. Have you seen that?
Yeah, that ugly motherfucker. Yeah, I actually like that movie. That movie's actually really fun to watch. I can't lie.
To be honest with you, I don't remember it at all, but I wouldn't mind watching it again.
If I redeem it, it'll be on my account. I've been thinking about it.
Sweet. I'm curious because I like Benicio del Toro. You called him ugly.
Magnificent.
Don't forget, he's also the dude in The Last Jedi with the stutter.
Oh yeah, and then he sells him out like a fucking rat.
And a couple years later, I don't know if you saw this one, but they did Dracula Untold.
Yeah. Now correct me if I'm wrong, but there was a Frankenstein movie that came out with Aaron Eckhart, Harvey Two-Face.
I Frankenstein?
Yeah, is that part of the same universe, or?
I don't think so. I remember hearing that wasn't. I think that might be another studio, actually. I'm going to look it up, but I don't think it had to do with that one.
Okay.
Yeah. Some just tells me that it didn't. I could be wrong, though, but last time I heard it wasn't anything to do with that. But the point being is, they've always been trying to kickstart this series, right? Because Universal has some properties, but that's always been one that people, whenever they think of classic monster movies, they're like, Universal. That's just what it is. And
so really quick, Lionsgate. So not in the same realm.
Oh, you looked it up?
Yeah, Lionsgate. So not even the same. Not even relatable.
Nah. That one has nothing to do with that. And so they tried again. Let's make it official. They even made a whole really cringy opening with this banner, The Dark Universe, and then you see a very lame montage with rock music and like sync music over the old footage of the movies with the monsters. And they're like, let's make this Tom Cruise movie where it's the Mummy. That obviously was a failure, both critically and financially. So they're wondering what the hell to do. Fast forward a couple years later, they ended up teaming up with Blumhouse, and they gave them the genius idea about, hey, how about you not try to spend $150 million and make a blockbuster? How about you just spend a decent amount of money, make a simple movie that actually has some scares in it, some thrills, and you might make a little bit of a comeback and save this universe. And that's where we have the first entry, The Invisible Man. And before I kind of get into this movie as a whole, what do you feel about that concept? Do you like the fact that the Dark Universe failed? Would it have interested you if it did succeed after The Mummy, or do you care?
So, I'd never seen The Mummy, but even when I saw the previews, it looked cringe as fuck. And I like Tom Cruise. I think he's good in moderation. Um, but I don't know. I just feel like, I just feel like that would have been something that they were trying way too hard for. Now, like you said, if they continue going down the route that they're doing now, I have no doubt that they'll yield success. Like, Invisible Man was a $7 million film and it made over 100 mil, which, I mean, again, is not a whole lot of money, but that's a huge profit for a movie that barely had any money to be used to begin with.
Exactly.
So,
yeah.
If they continue to keep going down that route, like, obviously if they do wolf movies or Dracula movies, they're going to have to spend a little bit more, but if they just follow that same kind of formula, I mean, I think that it could do them well. And I think the original route that they were going just would have been a shit show.
Yeah, imagine if somehow they thought that maybe The Mummy was justified to make a sequel, and they just try to make all these 150 million, 200 million blockbusters on these movies about monsters. Like, come on now. Like, would that really work? I don't know. I mean, that's Captain Hindsight over here, but point being, it did lead to this good decision, and I feel like it was a smart one. Who knew that making a movie that was cheaper and just sticking to simple things when it comes to horror, because horror movies have always just been made on the cheap. That's just a fact. Whenever you look at any horror movies in general, they're a lot cheaper than making a blockbuster because you don't have to have as much put into it. And I don't mean like creatively or effort. I'm just talking about like production, budget, things like that. And I feel like this movie succeeds in a lot of ways. And I wouldn't call it perfect, but man, I feel like a current Invisible Man movie today,
perfect.
It's really close to everything that I would have wanted. And I think the fact that this came out to have as much money as it did in the box office is it really makes me happy because I'm excited. And just to kind of cover a few quick things, I feel like this movie does have a few twists in there. It keeps the simplicity of the concept, and it always has a certain theme about it. And what I mean by that is there's a lot of different Invisible People movies. Like there's the original Invisible Man movies.
Hollow Man.
There's Hollow Man.
I want to get into Hollow Man before we talk about our last thing, but I want to save that for last. It's so fucking funny.
Are you sure? I was about to say we can talk about Hollow Man really quick.
You want to talk about Hollow Man now? Oh man,
yeah,
Hollow Man is so cringe, dude. That movie's so fucking funny. It's so vintage, early 2000s, like right on the nose. The stereotypical rock music that they have in these movies, the tongue-in-cheek humor, the semi-decent graphics. It's such a bad movie, but it's so fun to watch.
It's so fun to watch, man. Like you know when people say like movies are a product of their time, I feel like that's so relevant to those movies because you feel like you're back in the early 2000s when you watch the first Hollow Man.
Every time I fucking watch Hollow Man, I laugh my ass off every time they have Kevin Bacon lip singing songs. It's the most cringe. It's the most cringe thing ever. But like it works for the movie because like when you watch a movie in the early 2000s, like that's something that you would see in these kind of movies.
Yeah, all movies, a lot of big like hit movies at that time, or even big budget movies, they were like that. They had music blasting in your face that was relevant around that time, and a lot of it was like alternative rock.
And yeah, always alternative rock and all that shit, and it's just so funny. Like it's just like the funniest shit to me.
Yeah, Kevin Bacon going mad because he can't go back, and then they put a latex skin suit on him. He just takes it off to go mess with people.
Yeah, like all right. Well, we'll have to. Because I will say that we can talk about the funny stuff of it, but I do want to save the subtle differences between the concept of them being invisible for the actual discussion.
Okay, that's definitely fair.
But I mean, anyway, like to me, I love this movie. Like it was a solid 9 for me. Like you said, it's damn near perfect. I think we could talk about the technical problems that I had with it first, and then I realized later on that, like, you know what, it doesn't bother me. Like, it makes a lot of sense. Well, the one thing that I didn't like about it at first is that God, what was it? Oh yeah, my thing was that how did he forget that there was a second suit? Like, remember I had told you that had like kind of bothered me a little bit. Like, how did this dude forget that there was a second suit? But then I realized, well, wait a minute. This dude always thought he was one step ahead of her. He always thought that he was smarter than her. He was better than her. And he probably always realized that she would never be smart enough to know what the code was, let alone figure out how to get the suit and figure out it was there. So once I kind of figured out and realized that, oh yeah, that's his character. That's who he is. I didn't have a problem with that anymore. I do think that the twist with his brother being in the suit was a little predictable, but again, it wasn't really something that like ruined the movie for me.
Now, but before you move on to that, I do want to hear more about that because when I first watched that movie in theaters, and he's talking about how, yeah, I don't mean to spoil anything, but he's talking about how this big event that's going to happen is your fault, and it turns out to be a twist with his brother. And I'm wondering, did you know that was going to happen right away? Because when I saw it was his brother, that kind of threw me off. I didn't really think that was going to be him.
Once his brother admitted to her that he was in on it, I knew it was going to be his brother that was going to get shot up. Because I was like, it doesn't make sense because the way that this movie is heading down, story-wise, it wouldn't make sense for him to get shot.
Yeah. Okay.
Because to me, I felt like there needed to be that closure between her and Adrian in order to resolve the movie. And it wouldn't make sense if he had just gotten killed right there.
So then, as a side note, there was probably 3 suits, maybe even more then, right?
Well, he was a leading, optometrix? Whatever, I'm probably butchering that, but optics software kind of guy. So, I mean, there could have been multiple suits around, but maybe those 2 suits that he had were just prototypes.
Okay.
I don't know.
Yeah, that
I
makes
think
sense.
I think what happened is that he was in the process of like cracking it and like finally figuring out how to get it to work. Mm-hmm. But, you know, all that stuff happened with his relationship, so he didn't really give a shit about his job anymore. He just wanted to be a dick, so.
And then I also remember hearing you talk about other scares that you knew were coming, like, for example, the one in the attic. You said you saw that as well.
Yeah, I figured that was going to happen. Like, it was just too obvious. But, like, the thing about this movie is that it was something that was done exceptionally well. Like, the thrill and all that, like, even though I kind of knew it was kind of predictable and it was coming, like, it still kind of shook me. Because I was like, oh, damn, like, what's going to happen next? Like, how is this going to play out in the rest of the movie or in the rest of the scene? And, like, it was just fine.
Yeah, that's kind of what I love about it, too. And I know I already told you about this, so kind of a retread. But what I feel that this movie did well was it always had a purpose to what it was doing, and it always had a theme. And what I mean by that is not only like Invisible People movies, there's all these crazy movies like ghosts, horror, things like that, where creepy things happen with the audience in mind. They don't happen to the character, per se.
Oh, yeah, dude. Good point. Like in the kitchen where he just turns on, like just subtle things like that, where like the shit disappears out of her suitcase and like he turns on the heat in the kitchen. Like, that's some good shit.
Right. Like tell me how many times you're watching a horror movie and no matter what it is, just casting a wide net here to creep the person out. It's more based on the audience, and they're like sitting there cooking or something, and then a shelf opens. They turn around. Oh, what was that? What happened? Oh no, a door opens. Oh no, the house starts shaking and pans start falling down. But there's no point. They're just doing that to just try to get a reaction, right? That doesn't happen in this. This guy has a plan, and he always has a goal from the very beginning, and it's always clearly set. And that's what I love.
Exactly. Everything that he did in that movie was coldly calculated, and he even had a backup plan for everything. Like, and that's why I love about it.
It didn't go the right way. There's like, oh, well, I still got you because I did this as well. And whether it's revealed or not, it's most of the time you can see how it happened. And if it didn't, you can just see that this guy's a smartass. And I don't mean like a smartass with attitude. He's just fucking intelligent. And it just makes it all the more believable.
Right. Exactly. And I mean, the fact that like he started planning, you know that he started planning this shit. As soon as that day that she had left, he started planning all this in his head.
Right away. It was like as soon as it happened, and don't mean to jump off of that so quick, but it is kind of funny when you're watching that first scene and you like try to think about like time, how much time passes. Dude, when he comes to the car.
That nigga booked it like Captain America did with Black Panther and Wakanda. Like, you really think about how long it took for her to jump over that wall, run through the woods, and meet up with her sister in the car. Like, this dude booked it, man. Like, I don't know if this dude used to be a triathlete or something, but this nigga booked it through the woods. Not only that, but the dude broke the glass, too. Like he
Yeah,
punched
came
out
out
a
of the car
window.
and just punched the fuck out of it.
And that shit is so funny to me because when I first watched this movie, I didn't even think about that. But then when it came out on home release, I was like, wait a minute. It's barely been like a minute and a half. And I know like in movie time, that's probably like 5 minutes. But like, how the hell did he get there so fucking fast?
Yeah, I didn't even think about it once until you pointed it out to me, and then once I started thinking about it, I just started busting out laughing. Like that was so fucking quick. He
Dude,
was
it's
just
funny as fuck.
like,
Like he literally hopped out of bed, realized she was gone, jumped over that fence like he was Spider-Man, and just like booked it like Captain America. Like that's really the only way that I can think of, man. Like it just doesn't make sense any other way.
oof.
But what you did say that you had some technicality problems with it, like about the whole Uber driver thing. Does that still
Yes.
bother you as much?
I'm glad you brought that up because, as I said in the beginning, I wouldn't say it's perfect. It's hard to say any movie really is perfect, but I love this one a lot. But if I have to point out what I think doesn't make a whole lot of sense to me, or I would say is maybe a shortcoming, originally was the Uber driver that was killed. And this isn't really something that's really spoiler filled because it's just something that happens and it's not really directed at the main plot. But there is a scene where you wonder why someone who's aiding her in her plan to go against him is in the way, and he has to get past this person to get to her. But nothing really happens to this person, right? He's just kind of left alone, and the movie forgets about him. At least what I thought. That was cleared up actually because we had a talk, and you were explaining to me, kind of by my own logic that I threw at you, that he always had a plan, and everything wasn't pointless. If this was a random horror movie, they would have just killed him just because that's what horror movies do, and it's for like shock value, right? But that wouldn't make sense in this situation because he doesn't have a reason to kill him. He has a goal. And if he killed him, mess with him, that would mess up with maybe another part of his plan that he had set up. You know what I mean?
Right, and not only that too, but even in the psych ward, like he didn't really kill anybody. Like he probably like really hurt a few people, but he didn't really kill anybody. And
He messed a lot of people up, but
yeah,
he just more was trying to get away. He just made sure that he could get away was the ultimate ending of that one. And before we get into that psych ward scene, because we will touch back on that, but I did want to say the transportation and travel part still kind of gets to me.
Yes, especially
Yeah.
especially when he leaves the psych ward and he's telling her, "Oh, I'm gonna go kill that little girl." How did his brother get there so quick?
Right.
You know, like they had to switch suits, and then he was like, and he probably punked his brother into going over there, obviously, because his brother was
He controls him too. Yeah.
But how did he get there so quick? Like they were literally there at the same kind of time. If you think about it, you didn't see him drive away. He just opened up the fence and he was gone.
He was gone,
So, like,
and
how
then
did
she
he
got a
get
car
there?
like really quick afterwards. She got a car, and she called and was like, "Hey, go home." That wasn't that long for him to meet up his brother. Hey, you got to go over to that house and kill that girl in there. What? And go through all that shit, switch out the suits, and then drive over there. That's I don't know, man.
Yeah, that's probably the only thing that like annoys me because, like I said, the whole Uber driver and how did he not know that that another suit was missing gets cleared up for me. But that there's just a gap in time that just doesn't really make a whole lot of sense in that part. And again, it's not enough for me to say, this movie's fucking stupid. It's just a nitpick that we probably both have that just doesn't really make sense logically from a time perspective.
Right, and no matter how much you can put aside or forgive because the movie's good, because you and I are people who judge movies on crap like that if they make sense, it's something that you just can't really get rid of, right? And something else,
It's movie logic.
It's movie logic, and you can really choose how much of that is going to ruin a movie for you or not, or maybe you can't choose, maybe it's just how you are. But I can't say that it ruined really much of the movie for me. It's just something that you kind of think about later, and it's like, wait, how does that make sense? And I did also want to touch on the fact that the house aspect, because this house was filled with 3 people during the whole movie, but it's pretty much 4. It's 4 people. You just can't see the 4th person. And Lee Winnell did touch on this. He did a live watch with Twitter followers. I was like following along with each of his tweets. You probably saw me retweet some of them. And yeah, people did ask about like, hey man, so what happened when like everyone was just doing their normal shit, living their life, and obviously he was in the house hanging around. Like, do you have like in your mind or in notes like what he was doing during all this time? And he did say that like during each scene where you don't see him, he either was around or was in his hiding spot. And his hiding spot was up in the attic. And I'm like, that's cool and all that makes sense, but I'm wondering like how many times was he able to get out and in the attic without making a bunch of noise over and over? Like if he had to take a piss or take a shit, like how many times did he really go back and forth, let down this ladder and go back up it's kind of, you know, you kind of have to put that away, really. But it's just that kind of got
He
me.
had to have obviously done it when they weren't home, but it kind of does. And again, that's movie logic because it kind of does make you think like, okay, like was the dude just like hanging around like under the bed the entire time, or was he just like in the attic? Like, did he ever go to sleep? Like, there had to have been certain points in the movie where he just wasn't there because it wouldn't make sense for him to be there all the time. You know,
Yeah, he
I
probably
think
left the
he,
house and stuff. Yeah.
I think he just picked and chose when he wanted to be there and fuck with her. Like, obviously that night when he stands on the blanket and he's taking pictures of her. Like, obviously that was the night he chose to fuck with her. But like all the other times, he had to have not been there. There's just no way.
Yeah. That's it's stuff like that. He had not been there. He said that he was there hanging out in the attic, and I'm just like picturing him like on his phone, like, you know, sleeping,
He's got
beating
his
off in the
feet up.
attic. Like, man,
Yeah, he's
how
got
many
his feet up and shit.
it's like how many hours are you going to spend in here? But that's really, again, you touched it. It's nitpicking. It doesn't ruin the movie for me. I think that the movie by itself is very strong. I think he did a lot with so little money, and the payoff. I heard some people didn't like it and did like it. And without trying to spoil everything for you, she does get her way. He gets his comeuppance in one way or another, and it ends up kind of on a cliffhanger, I'd say, where she has some of the technology left. Um, I thought it kind of seemed like it was warranted. I feel like everything led up to him being the smarter one, always being in control, and for once that was flipped on its head, and he wasn't in control, and he wasn't the smartest one. I don't know, it was kind of poetic. But what did you think of the
Well,
ending?
yeah, because he always thought that he was in control, and it ties back to what I was saying earlier about how he just assumed that she wasn't smart enough to find that second suit. And the thing is too is like even if he was like, oh, well, she knew the code, there's no way that she would have found the suit there. Like he wouldn't have to
She's too
go over there and
stupid.
physically touch. Yeah, he wouldn't have to physically touch the mannequin that it was on because he would have obviously figured, oh, she's too dumb to figure it out.
Yeah, exactly. And finishing up on that last scene there, I don't know if you saw my retweet on this, but Lee Winnell did confirm that if he wasn't lying so much and would have just like fessed up on things that he did, he wouldn't have died. Like he would have been able to like go on living and just kind of like accept that he lost, but he wouldn't give up. He just kept sticking to his guns, and that's the reason why it ended up happening that way, which I thought was kind of cool because it's like
That's
he's
pretty
so much of
cool.
a dickhead. You know what I mean?
But at the end of the day, he fucking killed her sister. Like I don't really
Yeah,
see
yeah.
how he thought that she was just gonna let him kind of get away with that.
Just let
In
that
my
slide.
opinion, they just let it slide. I mean, unless they were just like best girlfriends and you know they felt like calling each other sisters, but like I don't
No, they
know.
were actually sisters. They talk about like I think they talk about their parents at one point.
Okay, gotcha. Now, one thing that I do want to talk about before we move on to our final topic is the concept of being invisible. Because you
All
look
right.
at Hollow Man, Kevin Bacon took a serum, and every part of him was invisible. Like he has to be fully naked in order to be considered visible. But
Like
then you have
Invisible
the
Woman in the
invisible.
Fantastic Four movies.
Yeah, I guess that. Yeah, because I remember she had a special suit made in order to blend in. So yeah,
Yeah, and before that, she had to take off her like bra and shit.
take all her clothes off. Yeah, and then you have the Invisible Man, where it's just like an optics kind of thing, where the dude was just in a field of optics, and he had the necessary technology to make that kind of stuff happen. And to be honest, I kind of like the latter idea better, the Invisible Man idea better. It's just a more realistic thing that just makes more sense.
It's odd because it's almost like technology that's too great to make sense, but at the same time, it does because you see the cameras all over the place, right? And it kind of gives the impression that it takes pictures or like constant like video of what's going on and projects it, so you just see right through. And this just a quick little side note. This might help, but I don't know if you ever saw the first live action GI Joe. Have you seen that movie?
No, I haven't. I haven't even
Okay.
bothered with those.
Oh yeah, you don't need to, but there actually is a concept in there. There's this dude who like picks up this suit that the government made, where it's like that, but it's like not as crisp. Where it's a suit with cameras all over it, and then it takes a picture of what's behind you, and it like projects it in front. So it's almost like you're invisible if you stay perfectly still, but then if you start moving, you're like choppy and stuff. So because I already saw that, and then I saw this version of like obviously more advanced, and it just kind of made sense to me. And it was weird because I told myself that when I first went in the movie, I'm like, I really hope it's not a suit. I really hope it's not like a dumb, corny suit that he's wearing. And once the movie was over, I was actually happy it was because I thought it worked very well. And it not only is the suit something that you can believe, I think it's also kind of creepy looking when it's not active. It looks kind of weird when you
Yeah.
look at it, you
It's
know?
very like black and dotty
There's
and
like
like
dots
weird
all over
looking.
the place. Yeah.
Yeah. And those are obviously just the cameras, I think to just like trick the lighting in the atmosphere or like in
Yeah.
the area that it's in. But I think it looks cool as shit. I do, well, the one thing that I can appreciate about Hollow Man is the fact that it was a more of a psychological kind of trauma that made him nuts and made him try to kill everybody that he was working with.
Because he wasn't always a murdering asshole, yeah.
Right. And on top of that, too, I mean, I think it just, I just realized this too, dude. They share some similar parallels because he was a narcissist in Hollow Man. He's also a narcissist in The Invisible Man.
True.
Like they both act like they're above everybody. And that's how he was. And that's how Kevin Bacon was too. Because remember when Josh Brolin was trying to help him? He's like, oh, why the fuck did you waste my time for 93 fucking percent?
For 93 fucking percent.
Yeah. Like he thought that his time was worth more than that. So I can appreciate that because they do share similar qualities. But the one thing I don't really understand about Hollow Man, and I know that I can drone on about this all day, is like when he gets burnt up, and he gets damaged. Like remember he gets hurt at the end of the movie and they're on the elevator.
Yeah, she's pretty much shooting flamethrower on him. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, how's he visible at the end? Like you can see his junk and you can see like his muscles and all that. But like, how does that work? Like, isn't he supposed to be invisible the entire time? Like,
even with that serum, if he was burnt, I don't think you would see his burnt if you can't see his whole body, right? Like that's kind of weird.
Right. It's like kind of flawed in my opinion, like the logic of how that serum works. Cause like to me, like does it act like a suit of armor? Like does the more and more he gets damaged or hurt, the more his body comes back? Like how does that work? So I don't know. I don't want to drone on too much about it, but I just kind of thought that concept was kind of funny. And to me, I don't think that would work. That would have worked as well in this movie.
I mean, it was a product of its time, and it was made to be. Right. I remember before I watched it recently, when I was little, and I watched The Hollow Man the first time, I actually thought it was pretty creepy. I liked it a lot, so, I mean, take that for what you will. But I did want to ask...
That's goddamn funny.
You know how they have the thermal goggles in there? It's like, oh, we can see him because of his body heat. Just out of curiosity, do you think if Elizabeth Moss had thermal goggles in this new one, would she be able to see him in the suit, or not?
I don't think so, because that was the whole point of the suit. It wasn't body heat. It was based off of what he was wearing.
Yeah, exactly.
That's the whole point. Like if a predator was trying to look at him, it wouldn't work because he was hidden. Because that's how their optics work. Is that they have like that camouflage that's like naked. That can't be seen to the naked eye.
Interesting. I was wondering if like his body heat would still come through the suit, but
that is a possibility because then again, those predators they can like. I don't think it would work on thermal goggles like in Hollow Man. I don't think it would work that way.
No, probably not.
But I think a predator would be able to find him because they were able to because he could just listen to his heartbeat and be able to find him.
Oh yeah, you're right. He has like a bunch of different means. So, all right. Well, that kind of wraps up, I guess, our Invisible Man thoughts here. I know we kind of went on a bit, but anything else you want to say about that one or the other ones?
Nah, it's cut for me, but. I know we want to talk about one other thing, and I do want to have a full episode dedicated to this entire series because it's one of my favorite in the sci-fi genre. But I was just bored one day because all this staying home quarantine shit. I was just digging around on my Movies Anywhere account, and I saw that I had a director's commentary for Alien Resurrection, and I started watching it. I honestly think this is probably the first director's commentary of a movie I've ever watched. And I was bored, and I was like, I don't have anything else better to do. Kids are asleep. Let me just go ahead and start watching this. And it was interesting. Like, I thought it was great, and I made it like 15, 20 minutes in. I had to start work, but I was telling you to watch it. And I know that we both finished it recently. And there's a lot of stuff in this movie. Well, I don't know if I said the title already, but Alien Resurrection, that after just watching that director's commentary, I can appreciate it a little bit more.
Was that really the first director's commentary you've ever watched?
Yeah, I think so, dude. The problem is like, with having kids, it's like difficult to lend your attention span to movies. So, and on top of that, I also just didn't really think about watching them because I don't think I own a lot of them. Mm-hmm. So yeah, that was kind of like the first time I've ever like gotten around to something like that.
That's very interesting. Yeah, I remember you told me about it. How you gave me a few points about how they were talking about the production of the movie and their thought process with the writing, and then Fox being a factor in there as well. And it was interesting. The one that we're talking about, like you said, is Alien Resurrection. Kind of random, but with that being said, this was made by, wasn't the director's name John St. Pierre?
Something French.
Something French.
It's like a Frenchman.
They're all named the same thing, right?
Now. Jean-Pierre Jeunet? Or
Jean-Pierre Jeunet. Okay. Yeah, there you go.
But interestingly, before we dive in, this was written by Joss Whedon, which is like funny to me.
As you will know from class or what was I going to say? Cult hits like the Avengers,
Yeah.
Avengers, Age of Ultron, Buffy the Vampire
He's
Slayer,
written some other stuff too, besides that.
Firefly.
Right.
Uh, he helped with Justice League. What else has he done? He's done a lot of shit, but those are like the biggest ones. And he wrote this, and we can talk a little bit about it. We're going to talk mostly about the commentary because I feel like we're going to come back to actually talk about the movie itself when we talk about the Alien movies.
Right.
But when it comes to this commentary, it's really interesting because they did bring up Joss Whedon as the writer, and a lot of the times when I hear directors' commentaries, they do talk about the writer a lot, but not so much in this one. In this one, they only mention him like 2 times, from what I remember.
Yeah,
the
they mention him. The one time that I remember him being mentioned is that there was something happening in the movie, and he's like, I don't even think Joss Whedon even remembers what was going on or understood what was going on.
Yeah, and that was weird to me, man, because I've told you, I've listened to, not a lot, but every time I have the time, I'll listen to director's commentaries for movies that I love just to kind of get some insight. And I'm always so used to hearing like, oh yeah, when this guy wrote this, I think he was so on point because this. And I never heard that with Joss Whedon. I just heard like, oh, Joss Whedon wrote this. And then they talk about the fucking special effects or something and just like move on.
Yeah, and the budget and like how they made the scene and stuff like that. Yeah, he's very lightly mentioned. Like, I don't know.
And I wonder if that's intentional or something. But besides the point, I feel like Alien Resurrection is very interesting because Fox really did just kind of look at a random director and happened to be this French guy, right? He made this movie. What was it? Children of a Lost City or something like that. They keep talking about it.
Yeah, and the guy in the wheelchair in that movie, Brice, apparently he's been in all of his movies in France.
Yeah, I remember them saying that.
Yeah, and apparently, like, they wanted him, and then they also wanted the guy that played Brice, Dominique, or whatever his name was.
Yeah.
And apparently he thought it was like some kind of a joke. And they're like, no, man, they really want you to be in this movie. But remember, in the commentary, he said this was a French film, but made with American money, is what he said.
That's what they said, and apparently Fox was very keen to that idea. They're just like, hey, we're going to do this series, and they were very excited to have a French person working on it, from what I remember hearing. And they were talking about how they were kind of surprised that he wanted to do it, and once they said yes, they're like, do it, man, make it all French. Like that whole ending part where they ended up landing on Earth, they're like, hell, have it even so the fucking Eiffel Tower is going up, and you can see all that. Like, they wanted to make it French. And that's really interesting to me because the original first movies, they really were American, so you would think that any other studio would be like, we're going to try to keep the same thing, but they let this dude just do whatever the hell he wanted, and he didn't even know English when he was starting to work on this movie.
I thought that was pretty funny, too. Like, he had to have an interpreter on set with him because he didn't know anything. He didn't know English.
He didn't know English?
He said by the end of the movie, I guess by the time they were done filming, like, that's when he finally learned it.
Yeah, and apparently, like, there was a lot of times where they'd be looking at the script, and the script would be in English, and once they would do a take, he would go to his interpreter and be like, "So, what did they just say?" Like, damn, dude, like, how hard is that to make a movie?
I must have missed that, but I didn't even know that that was a thing like that. That's really funny.
I do remember I had subtitles on, so even if I couldn't hear them saying it, I could read what they were talking about. And he did say that. He would say that there'd be times when they were done taking the take, and he would go to his interpreter and ask, like, what was it that they just said? So he could, like, try to interpret the scene for himself as a director, which is kind of insane to me. That's just, like, a whole nother level of filmmaking. So I do give him respect. You already know there's a lot of things I don't like about Resurrection as a whole, but I do want to touch on other things that you found interesting about the commentary.
I'm trying to think, like, chronologically, I'm trying to, like, remember. I know there was that thing about the beginning sequence that they had to scrap because it was too expensive, but I mean that didn't really like blow me out of the water.
What did he say? Because it starts off with like a fly zooming out, and then they were saying that they wanted another spaceship?
So the original version was apparently a close up of a fly's teeth, and they wanted you to think it was like an alien, but it ends up panning out to be a fly, and there's this dude that's working like somewhere like I guess on the outside of the ship, and he ends up squishing a bug. And then he throws it in the straw, and he spits it out of the window. And what ends up happening is that the scene ends up panning out to show you the Auriga, or not the Auriga. What is it? What is it in this movie? What the hell is the name of that ship?
I thought it was the Auriga.
Myself. It is the Auriga. I'm sorry.
It was,
yeah. And then that was supposed to be the main sequence, but because a lot of it was like computer rendered, they felt like that was too expensive, so they had to scrap it because of that reason. But to me, that wasn't really something that I was like mind blown about. I was glad that they kind of scrapped it because I thought it was kind of like corny. But again, the director says throughout the entire commentary, like, I wanted something kind of funny. Like he throws like humorous bits all throughout the movie.
And he knows it. Yeah, he's very. And see, because I always saw this movie and I was like, this guy must have not really like understood that he's making a movie with goofy shit in it and a very serious franchise. But no, he talks about it. He's like, I love humor. I love humor. I always wanted
humor. I think it is a part of life. Yeah.
He's talking about. He's like I cannot make movie without humor because it's just impossible. I'm like, all right, well, hey man, you know what? As long as you know it, you know it. I actually can respect that. I really can.
Yeah, I can most definitely respect that more than someone who's not self-aware and thinks they're trying to be serious. But one thing that really stood apart for me, besides the underwater sequence, was the fact that Reese's wheelchair. What it is that it wasn't really a wheelchair. I guess they wanted to design their own kind of wheelchair for this movie. But because, again, they were running into budget issues, they found this piece of machinery. I don't know what the name of it was called, but it was a piece of machinery that they basically designed into a wheelchair to kind of fit like the style of the movie. And basically they, of course, had to have people pilot it because I guess it would have been dangerous if they just kind of moved it on its own. It was too heavy, but they basically designed it to be a wheelchair. They made it move like a wheelchair. And apparently the studio was really grateful about it because it saved them a bunch of money instead of like just doing a raw design like they were intending on doing.
They were talking about how that was normally used for like other construction projects. And they're like, hey, we have use of this for this time if you want to use it. And I remember I was listening closely to that part too because you mentioned it. So I was like, well, I want to hear about that part. And they were saying that the actor in the wheelchair, that French dude, he did have control of it for certain scenes, like if he's coming down a hall. But then for certain parts where he was next to people, they actually had someone do it with a remote control because they were afraid that like if he turned the wrong way by accident while he's trying to act, he could like hurt somebody. So they had someone else do it with a remote control, which makes perfect sense.
Right. And that also explains why he ended up losing the chair later on anyway. Like obviously they got in underwater, so they had to get rid of it anyway. But I wonder if that was a part that was written into the movie because they couldn't use that piece of equipment anymore.
I wonder. They didn't specify on that, but that
they didn't specify it. To me, the fact that they spent 3 weeks in that underwater tank just to film that entire sequence, I think that they probably lost the chair on purpose. I think it had to have been written into the movie because the fact that they spent that long on the underwater part, there's just no way that they would have put all that effort towards it, in my opinion.
Oh, yeah, I agree. And I'm glad you brought up the water part, man, because I actually thought that was one of the most interesting parts to me. I was kind of like I was listening to all of it, of course, but when it came to how much they were talking about how many weeks they were spending in water to make that
3 weeks, they said.
Well, the whole part is like what, like 7 minutes, 10 minutes? I don't know. I don't know how long.
Dude, I literally think the swimming part in that movie is at least like 4 minutes. It's really not that long. I think it's like 4 or 5 minutes, and then the part after that is when they're trying to get out and get onto the ladder. But I think that part wasn't even that difficult for them to film. It was them trying to, because remember they were talking about the fact that they had to take 3 different breaths. They had to take 2 because they needed to get rid of all the bubbles before they started filming. So they were out of air.
They didn't want any bubbles.
Right, and they would end up running out of air when they started acting because they're exerting all the air in their lungs.
That is fucking crazy because that scene is so small when it comes to the movie, but they spent so long doing that. And then Ron Perlman, he talks about how many times he was saved because he was like trying to go through the scene and do all the memorized movements. And then sometimes he would like freak out and run out of air. And a stunt driver would have to save him. Like, yeah, that's fucking scary. Like, holy shit.
Remember Leland Orser, the guy that plays Purvis? He said that his dive guy wasn't there one day. Like, I guess he was like taking a piss or something.
He was taking a break and he had to just get out himself.
and he had to hang out with Ron Perlman during the rest of that, I guess, time until the dude came back because he can breathe. It's crazy.
Yeah, man, all that for just that one part. And like, that's fucking crazy. Then. And I already told this to you before, but it's a small part. But after they get out of the swimming part and then they are fighting on the ladder, right? Ron Perlman, he talks about how he was actually holding his knees up or his legs up and going upside down to shoot the xenomorphs on the ladder. And he was doing that position for so long, doing that tape.
His legs up.
It cut the back of his legs up, and when he went in the shower, there was like blood gushing from the back of his legs. Like, holy shit! Like, damn.
See, that's dedication right there. Like, you can't deny.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that. I'd be like, hey man, give me a pad or something. But no, he just said he stuck it out. So that's just what you do.
One thing that I thought was kind of interesting too is that Fox didn't want Ron Perlman. Remember that he said that they were kind of doubtful about him.
Yeah, they were.
Then
very
they saw him on set, and they were like, "Oh, okay, that's fine." but they were like, eh,
Yeah,
at
at
first.
first when they told him, they were like, is he really the guy to fit the role? And then after they saw a few dailies, they were like, oh yeah, he does kind of fit the role. So it's
Yeah,
just
that's
kind of
pretty
funny you have
crazy.
to see him. But and then
He had to like prove himself to like end up being in the movie.
they talk a lot about Winona Ryder and her being an android and stuff. Not really too much insightful from the commentary. I'm just kind of judging it from the commentary, but everything I saw from the
Yeah.
movie, I kind of saw from the commentary, so not much on her. They were
Well,
talking a
he
lot
did
about
say, well, he
what?
did say, not to interrupt you, but he did say that she wanted to do improv a lot in that movie. Because remember,
Oh
I guess
yeah,
he was like being really serious about it. She's like, hey, man, like, I can show you some stuff, like, relax. And I guess he ended up liking what she did.
it's like chill out, man, chill out.
Like, chill the fuck out, man. I could see her acting like that on set. Like, hey, man, just like, calm the fuck down, bro.
It's all good.
It's all good, dude. Chill.
He was like all over Sigourney. Like he was talking about how great Sigourney was, how awesome she
Well,
is.
and I'm glad you brought that up because there's one other thing I want to talk about before. Well, we'll talk about Sigourney before I talk about the next thing. But she kind of does come off pretty spoiled, like with her character and how much she's able to get away with in these movies.
I
But
think so.
I can't really be mad or upset because she makes the movies. Like it's like these movies are all about her, and I can respect the fact that she's as invested in the character as she is.
Mm.
And I'm glad that there were certain things that she fought for that, Fox let her keep. Like, you remember the Xeno carrying her to the nest? They didn't
Yeah,
want that in the movie, but she's like, you know what? If Fox cuts it, then I'm not gonna. What did she say? I'm not gonna do a promotion for
I'm not
him.
going to do any promos for it.
Yeah, and they let her keep it. And to me, like I'm glad that they kept that in there because it only solidified that weird clone connection that she had with the rest of the Xenos.
And that's there intentionally, even from the whole movie when you watch it.
Yeah,
That's part of it. So that does make sense. I understand why she fought for that.
and the only thing that kind of annoyed me hearing about the commentary is that the girl that played Hillard, the one that was with Michael Wincott in the movie, where I guess she was like doing stuff with him. She saw her costume on set and was like, "That's kind of something what I wanted for Ripley." And I think they had to do a whole day of redesigning
For the other person.
Sigourney's
Yeah.
costume so that way she could get what she had wanted. So I mean, I don't know. I mean, she is a high profile actress. Like she's definitely not like she's definitely been in the game for a while. So I mean, shit, kind of like Robert Downey. I guess he's gonna get whatever salary it is that he wants.
Hey, that's what it is, man. That's why I can't be like, why did Fox do that? Why? I completely understand why. Because if they're going to make another Alien like that and they were planning on having her back and then she's like, I'm not going to do it, you can't. Like, what if Robert Downey was like, I'm not going to do Civil War unless this is this and this? Marvel would probably try to work with him, right? To make it work. Because recasting just takes you out of the movie. And you and I were talking
It
about that before.
does. It just
It will
like
always
ruins
take you out.
everything.
Imagine if someone else tried to take over Ripley's role in Alien Resurrection. It just wouldn't work,
Oh
right?
god, it just wouldn't work. It would just feel like it's not even part of the same series. Like it just wouldn't. It just would not work or translate well. I was just gonna say that I don't think I had an opportunity to talk to you about this before, but the newborn. I know that I always told you that they had this idea for meshing up the genitals on the newborn, but Fox felt like it was too much, so they axed
Yes.
it. I know I told you that years ago. But one thing I thought was interesting is that I didn't know that the fucking thing was fully like animatronic. Like I didn't even know it was
Oh,
that
you didn't?
huge either. Well, I mean, when you look at the movie, you don't really think about it that way. But like when you hear them talk about it, you're like, oh damn, it is animatronic, and damn, it is like 7.5 fucking feet. Like this thing's monstrous. And I didn't know that last scene when they're on the Betty before it gets sucked out. I didn't know how complex it was because remember, and I'm trying to tie this back to what you were saying about Reese's chair, but I didn't know that they had that animatronic on a two-way communication street, like how they had someone feeding the data for it and controlling it. So that way they said that the animatronic couldn't misinterpret information and potentially hurt Sigourney because she was that close to it.
Yeah, almost the same thing with the chair, exactly. Because it was so big and so bulky, they're like, hey, if this thing fucks up wrong and it moves and like messes up Sigourney, like, it could really hurt her. So they were wanting to make sure that she was safe, as well as
Yeah,
get a good shot in there. And I know what you're saying when you're watching the movie. You're just watching the movie, right? I guess ever since a couple years back, I always like try to look and see like, oh, is this like animatronic? Is this puppeteering? Is this CGI? When I saw this one again, I did notice it was an animatronic, and I always thought it was cool for that because there's a lot of CGI in that movie, but the newborn isn't, and it's kind of crazy when you see how much movement it has in its face. It's almost hard to tell. You know what I mean?
and I love the fact that it's like infant and childlike, that it doesn't know like how much strength it has and how pissed off it gets. Like I love that. in the movie.
Well, I
And
do
I
like
think that,
when someone with toddlers, you know how they can go from like rage to like sadness and stuff like that. So it makes sense.
yeah, and to me, I think the newborn is one of my favorite aliens in the whole series because it's just so twisted. Like it's such a fucked up thing to like. It's just a fucked up concept. Like it gets birthed and it doesn't even realize like what's going on. But it's like, you know what? I don't like this alien. I like Sigourney a lot more. Or I like Ripley more. So that's my mom. And then it gets, sucked out of space. And then you see this look of sadness that it has in its eyes and it's dying.
It
You
is
hear
dying.
you hear it saying no. Like you hear him screaming like an actual human. And that's the type of shit that I like about this movie. And that it's like so fucked up.
Yeah, it's messed up with that. It's messed up with the Ripley clones, and like it was interesting to hear that Sigourney Weaver was also the same one. I figured that it was her, but when they were talking about how she was also the one where they plastered over the fucked up prosthetics over her to make her look like a weird clone, like she really sold that.
Yes.
Like,
The number 7.
Yeah,
Yeah, dude, that the clone. Oh man, that to me, that's one of the most underrated parts of the movie is all the clones, the failed clones, and how like fucked up those look. Like you could just tell, it took them a long ass time to try to perfect that cloning process.
Oh yeah, for sure.
Before we close it out, I was gonna say, did you remember or did you notice that they said that they wanted the newborn to chase Ripley down the halls and into the ship, but they figured out, oh, that's not gonna happen because it's too big and we're not gonna CGI it.
Yeah, they did talk about that, and they were saying how it was going to be too costly, it was going to be too hard with an animatronic, so they tried to kind of do it with Winona Ryder, almost, but not really.
Right. Yeah. So I thought that was kind of interesting. And then the other thing that I just remembered was the fact that they didn't make their own Queen alien. Remember, I was telling you that they had to borrow it from a memorabilia collector, and they
Yeah,
just pretty much signed it up for him.
a very famous one who has like a bunch from a shit ton of movies, and he just happened to have this queen, and they're like, "Hey, can we get this?" And he's a G for doing that, man. Like, imagine if you had this expensive ass shit, and they're like, "Hey, can we use it for a third part?" Like, he's like, "Sure, why not?" And in exchange, they redid it for him, like they buffed it up
Yeah,
and
they
they put like
glossed it up. Yeah, exactly. And yeah, I don't know. Like, just imagine like if he was a fucking dick about it, and I was like, no, I don't want you to have it.
So a lot of things to appreciate. This isn't really nothing in the scope of the whole movie, but I thought it was kind of interesting how Pitoff kept talking. Pitoff, for those who don't know, he's very infamous as a famous visual effects artist, and the directors, the commentary that we were listening to, it was made in 2003. They were calling him a director then. They're like special effects artist turned director. And he directed his first feature in 2004, which was Catwoman, which was such a disaster financially.
No, that's pretty funny.
That he never directed anything again. But they're talking about Pitoff, the director, Pitoff. And I was like, I keep hearing him, and I'm like, oh man, poor guy. It's like I was in a time machine or something before they knew. But,
That's actually pretty funny.
So that's all I got for that.
While. It's probably just as bad as it was when I first saw it.
I will say, I don't, you know this, I never lie to you. Resurrection is not my favorite of the Alien movies. It's probably like one of my least favorites. I think it doesn't fit the tone.
So
it looks like an Alien movie, but it doesn't feel like one. But this commentary did make me appreciate more aspects of it. I can't lie. So there's that.
Oh, I can appreciate that. So where would you rank, and not including Prometheus and Covenant, where would you rank the first 4 Aliens?
I would say, so my list here, and this is my current list of this date. Aliens, in my opinion, number 1. Alien, number 2. Alien 3, number 3. And then Resurrection, number 4.
So my list is swapped just a bit. I think, you know what? I'll change it because I think I can enjoy Aliens more. It'd have to be Aliens, Alien, Resurrection, and then Alien 3.
So close.
Yeah. I don't know. I've always thought Resurrection was a fun watch. Like, to me, I mean, we could talk about Alien 3 some other time and, the whole franchise, but to me, I just think like Alien 3, like it's good. And I think it had a good ending because, Ripley dies and all, but I just don't find myself watching it as much. Like I watch Aliens, and Resurrection more than I ever watched 3.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, absolutely. That makes sense. If I have to say which one is more of a fun watch, by definition, fun, probably Resurrection. The reason why I say that I like Alien 3 more is because, in my opinion, it feels more like the other movies. But right. I see what you're saying. Like, you're basing it off of, like, what would you want to watch, right? So, I hear you.
Yeah, so, yeah, I can appreciate it. I think that's it. I think we kind of cleared all of our topics in a hopefully decent time frame.
That's all we got, man. We we made an epic comeback. We'll be getting this, making it sped up, clear the gaps. It won't be that bad, but hopefully we can find some more topics in the future because obviously there's a pandemic going on, so who knows what we're going to talk about.
Yeah, I mean, one thing I want to ask you real quick before we end. Quiet Place. I know I want to talk to you about this because I know you're not the biggest fan of A Quiet Place. I was really excited to see A Quiet Place Part 2 because it has Cillian Murphy in it and Dijon Mustard, that black guy. I always call him Dijon Mustard because I don't know how to say his actual fucking name, but to me, I thought it was going to be interesting to see like different people in the world affected by it because, you know, in the first one, it's all about the family. But in the second movie, it's more about like how other people are that are affected by it. And I think that's probably why I was excited for it. But I know you're not really like into A Quiet Place. I know you didn't like the first one.
I mean, to an extent, but I feel like it's been a while since we talked about it, so maybe you forgot. But I remember I was telling you and anybody else who asked about it, I was more excited for part 2 than the first one because I feel like part 2 has the potential to be a much better movie. I felt like the way that one ended, it was like just when it was starting to get good. Like when I finally felt like, okay, this is an interesting concept, and then it ended. And I always thought that A Quiet Place would do much better, not as a horror movie, because in my opinion, it kind of fails as a horror. I think it would do better as like a thriller survival movie. I think that would be dope if they like explore like how civilization is dealing with this fucking epidemic and people who discovered how to take these things down and lost and all that stuff. I think that would be interesting. But I was looking forward to number 2 because of that. I wasn't going to go to theaters. Don't get me wrong. But if I heard that that's what they did,
theaters.
If I heard that that's what they did, I think it would do much better as a thriller, not trying to be a horror because I don't think it's a good horror. But no, I am sad. I am sad that that's not going to come out at the same time. I'm pretty much sad for any movie that wasn't going to launch, to be honest. But no, to answer your question, I'm not going to watch it. I'm going to watch it. I just think that probably for different reasons than other people are.
Okay, fair enough. I just wanted to touch base on it because I know you said that there were some things logically in the movie that were kind of a flaw for you. Same thing with like, you know, Covenant. So yeah,
there is. We can touch on that. There's a lot of time we'll do some backtracking since we got some time. And you and I can maybe talk about A Quiet Place 1 and get into that in detail.
All right, yeah. I mean, the thing is like I'm not going to be able to speak to it as good because it's been forever since I've fucking seen that movie.
Well, obviously you and I will watch it before we talk about it.
All right, that's fair. But hopefully next time we record, there's a lot more shit that we can talk about. I mean, obviously there's different topics that we can talk about now. We just have to get some stuff together. But hopefully, you know, maybe 2-3 episodes from now, the world has somewhat returned back to normal. Movies are coming out again, and there's new shit happening, and sets, you know, open back up, and all that good stuff.
Best case scenario, that's what I'm hoping for. So fingers crossed that's what we'll get. But for now, I do want to thank you for having another chat with me. Thank you for anyone who's listening, made it this far. Again, sorry for the delay. You know, it's fucking life right now. But we'll keep trying to keep this up more consistently moving forward. And anything else you got to say before we close this out, Jordan?
Nah, I think that's about it. Yeah, thanks to anybody who is listening. You know, we're gonna try and get it on YouTube. I want to see if we can try to get this on like Apple Podcast. I know you said it's like a monthly cost, but I want to try and like look into it a little bit more. I feel like I could get more of a reach behind the people that follow me, because that way, you know, they don't have to keep their phones open while they listen to us. I think that's one of the main problems with YouTube is that if you don't have the premium, it's kind of hard to get away with watching stuff.
Oh shit! Sorry, I was on mute. Yeah, we'll talk about that. I'm definitely gonna put it on YouTube, but you're right. I'm gonna look at putting in other options as well because I know that watching with your screen open is not always gonna work. So we'll figure it out. Follow us. I'll leave some stuff in the description to follow me and Jordan on different sites and comment below. Message